Today is the last lecture you are forced to sit through. You should be excited about that. No longer have to put up with these things. But this is actually one of the one that I have a lot of fun giving this one. Let me just say that. Because test-driven development is probably the one I like the most doing. That's the most fun, but this one's really fun too. So this is about how to give technical presentations. Now, I do it right now just before you give your presentation to maybe give you a little hints and ideas on what you can do when you're giving your presentation. But this is really geared toward a technical presentation in a large group where you probably have a slide deck and so on. When you do your presentation on Friday, you will not have a slide deck. You will just have your browser and your VS Code, and that's it, right? And you'll just flip back and forth between them as you give your discussion, and you'll do it talking. So, but anyway, this presentation came about because when I first became promoted to be a director, I was given opportunity to go to director training, which was a 3-day offsite training session, which was a lot of fun. But I was rather surprised to discover that almost a full day of the 3 days was spent on how to give presentations. All the things they can teach you on how to be a director, they choose giving presentations. And I soon discovered that directors give a lot of presentations. So I've done all that. And also as I've gone through my career and seen other people give presentations, some of them nice and good, many of them not. I've begun to realize that your ability to give presentations as a developer actually is pretty important. And it's not necessarily important that you be just the most phenomenal, dynamic, entertaining speaker ever. But if you give a bad presentation, it really hurts your reputation. So I give this one to try and help you avoid some of the pitfalls. And what I did is I took essentially everything they taught us in that full day of training and boiled it down into under an hour. So of course I'm skimming like usual. I'm skimming over stuff and I'm trying to hit the most important points. All right. So here we go. And these are as usual, they're just kind of scattershot points, but I'll just go through them. But first of all, the most important thing you need to know is who are you talking to? Who's your audience? For example, are you talking to other developers? Are you talking to product managers? Are you talking to the business team? Are you talking to customers? Or are you talking, who are you talking to? You have to know that first. Why do you have to know it? I think it's obvious, but surprisingly, a lot of people forget who they're talking to. But depending on who you're talking to, that will determine how you speak. For example, and what things you emphasize. If you're talking to business leaders, you probably won't do much about any technical issues. And you certainly won't go into technical depth. You'll just kind of brush over your technical issues at a high level. If you're talking to product managers, they're not so interested in the code and the actual technical issues. They're more interested in, how does the software work? How can I sell it? How can I make use of it? Is it doing what it needs to? Is the customer going to like it? That kind of question. So you'll focus more on your features and impact and so on. But if you're talking to senior engineers, then they're probably wanting to do a review of how you've done your solution. They may not be that interested in the actual code you've written, but they will certainly be interested in how you approached the problem, the technical issues you faced, the challenges you overcame, how you solved them, and things like that. And then if you're talking to, suppose you're a junior engineer talking to other junior engineers, you may do those types of presentations. That probably is going to be more code focused. Here's the code I wrote. What do you think of it? What can we learn from it? Is there a better way to do it? That kind of stuff. So anyway, the important thing is just figure out who you're talking to, and then you can tailor your presentation to meet that audience. Okay. All right. So now that you know your audience, of course, the next thing you need to know is what's your goal. You always have to have a goal in mind when you give a presentation. What are you trying to accomplish? Why are you even giving this presentation? And if you don't know the goal, you're not going to achieve the goal at the end of the presentation. And your audience is going to, maybe they'll be entertained, but they won't really have done anything reasonable and worthwhile. So you need to know your goal and what you're trying to accomplish so that you can make sure that everything is geared toward that, accomplishing that. So for example, here's some things that might come up, reasons you might be giving a technical presentation. You might be asked to give a status update on your project. Happens a lot. Where are we? How is it going? And so on. So you'll say maybe the goal is just information. That's a reasonable goal, just to give information. Maybe you have an idea on how to solve a technical issue you're facing, and you have a proposal for a technical decision, a technical solution. And so you want to present the solution and get feedback on it. Okay. Maybe you're having some substantial challenges that you don't know how to get over, and you feel like you need to present that in front of an audience and get them to critique it and give you ideas. How do I solve this problem? What are the things I can try? All right. Maybe you have a plan, an idea for a new project that you could do, or sorry, that's the next one. You have a project that you've been given and you want to present the plan. Here's how we plan on approaching it. Get everybody's buy-in, to get everybody agree that this is a good way to approach it, and to, again, get feedback and so on. Maybe your goal here, you're trying to convince your leadership to give you a project. So you have a project proposal that you want them to look at. So in all of these, there's a specific goal, status updates, information, proposal, solution. It's probably to get everybody to say yes or no. Describe challenges is to get feedback. Get approval. Well, the goal there is obviously to get approval. Should we do it this way or should we not? And then to convince your team leadership to give you a project. Again, will you support this? Will you give us this project, etc. Okay. So now, once you know what your goal is, you can make sure your presentation actually, drives the audience towards the goal you're trying to get. Okay. So for example, if your goal is to propose a technical solution, then you might, in your introduction, you describe what problem it is you're trying to solve. Technical solutions are meaningless unless you know what problem you're trying to solve. So you describe the problem you're trying to solve, and then in your main content, you would describe the solution that you're proposing for how to fix that, why it fixes that. And then in the conclusion, you would summarize both the problem and the solution and why the solution fixes the problem, that kind of thing. Okay. So that's know your goal and make sure you're driving towards your goal. All right. Next one, fit within your time limit. You will almost always have a time limit when you give a presentation, as opposed to me when I get up here and lecture and teach. I can take as long as I want. And you're stuck. I'm the one driving that. But usually when you're giving a presentation, you'll have a time limit. And 30 minutes, 60 minutes, maybe there's 3 people giving a presentation in a 1-hour block. So you'll have 15, 20 minutes. Okay. Whatever it is, you'll be told this is how much time you have. And then you need to make sure that you fit within that time limit. Nothing worse than getting to the last 5 minutes of your presentation and realizing you're only halfway through what you wanted to present. Okay. It's terrible. So you need to figure out how to fit within that time limit, which means you have to practice it, rehearse it, say it over and over again, go through your slides. This is what I'm going to say with a stopwatch, time it, see how long it is that you take. Okay. All right. So it's a good rule of thumb that maybe 1/4 of the time, I've seen it up to half of the time, is taken up by questions from the audience, depending on what you're doing, especially if you're presenting a challenge or a proposal for a solution. There will be lots of questions. And so you need to prepare for that. So if you're said, okay, if you're told you have a half an hour to do the presentation and you think there's going to be a fair amount of questions, then you say, okay, my actual content needs to fit within 20 minutes. So I'll do 20 minutes. I'll prepare 20 minutes. Okay, so the next question is, I'm going to do a 20-minute presentation. Usually you'll have slide decks. How many slides can I get in a 20-minute presentation? If I have a slide deck that has 40 slides, it's not going to get done in 20 minutes. If I have 2 slides, I'm probably going to be done so quick, I'm not going to know what else to say. Okay. So you kind of get you have to figure this out. And there's a little rule of thumb that every slide in your deck will take about 3 minutes. And so some of them will go faster, some of them will go slower, but if you average it all out, you'll have about 3 minutes. So if I had a 20-minute time slot, I'd figure, okay, I have about 6 to 8 slides that I'm going to be able to get done. So I'd have to fit all my content into 6 or 8 slides. Okay. All right. Now, there are times when you try to fit within your time limit. Usually when you're given a time limit and you put your slide together and you go do your talk through and with a stopwatch, you find that you have 20 minutes and you talked all through everything you wanted to say and you're at 40 minutes. Yikes, what am I going to do? So then you have to go through and you have to decide what's really important, what in this really drives toward the goal I'm trying to get, trim it down until you can fit it within 20 minutes. A lot of times that means taking stuff out of this presentation that you really, really, really want to get across, but it's not as important as the other stuff. So what do you do with it? What do you do? Do you just walk away and say, okay, I learned this fun little trick at Google that very frequently after you give a presentation, you'll send a link to your slides out to all the meeting attendees or those who were supposed to attend. Sometimes people can't make it. And if you send them the slide deck, they can at least go through and find out what it is you're doing. And people that are interested in what you're doing might go through the slides again. So you take all that additional material that you had to throw out and you put it in the appendix. So you just have end with question and answers, an appendix, and here's all the stuff that I couldn't fit in. And that way, if somebody's very interested in it, they can go through and look at it. I've also discovered that if you do that very frequently, people will ask questions in the audience. And you'll say, oh, I happen to have a slide on exactly that topic in my appendix. So you flip to the appendix and show the slide and talk about it and then go back. And that's a very good experience for everybody. Okay. All right. So that's mostly all right. So that's those. I'm going to switch now and talk about speaking style. What do you do when you speak? Now, obviously, the most important thing when you speak is to be engaging. Doesn't matter how good your content is, if you're putting people to sleep with the way that you speak, you're not going to have a good experience. I'm going to do this a little bit out of order here because these thoughts come to my mind, but I have a good friend who is extraordinarily technically capable, cannot give presentations. He stands up there when he gives his presentations. He's as nervous as can be. He doesn't dare look at the audience. He looks back at his slides and he reads what's on his slide in a monotone voice. Humor is always welcome in a presentation, but make sure it is subtle and fits the content. Yeah, okay. Technical content, etc., like that. And it's just awful. I'm sorry, it's awful. He never had success with his presentations, and as a result, he could have done a lot better in his career, and if he had figured out how to have a little bit more of an engaging style. So I wanted to talk about that because it's very, very important to use a good speaking style. So first of all, speak loudly. Speak loudly.
Loudly.
Loudly, loudly, loudly. In our training, we were told speak loud. You'll always think you're speaking too loud, but you won't be. And she had every single one of us get up there, and she said, "Now, give a few, spend a minute or so talking about what you're going to present, or giving your presentation. Speak with as loud a voice as you can." And so on. And then at the end, she went back and she had asked each one of us, how loud do you think you were talking? Scale of 1 to 10. We all said 10 because we felt like we were shouting. Then she turned to the audience, said, how loud were they talking? Usually it'd be 4, 5, 6 in that range. So you're never talking loud enough. No matter how loud you think you're talking, it's never as loud as it really is. Sorry, you're never speaking as loudly as you think. Okay, so you need to speak loudly, and it's important to speak loudly because then it draws people in, draws their attention in. And if you're speaking so quietly that people can't hear you, then obviously it's a disaster. All right. And speak with confidence. I go over that all the time with you guys. Speak with confidence. I do not want to hear wishy-washy tones in your voice, especially important in a presentation. Okay, with confidence. Look at the audience while you're speaking. Don't go back and look at your slides. Now, these are not slide lectures. These are sometimes I just go through here because I do this in lieu of slides. But don't look at your slides, look at the audience. You will have to look at your slides to get some context, but then turn back and look at the audience, okay? And then also you'll want to pause frequently. People, when they're sitting in an audience listening to a presentation, maybe something you say will trigger a line of thought. Maybe they'll see something out of the corner of their eye that distracts them. Who knows? But they're not going to pay attention to everything you say. It always disappoints me when people raise their hand and ask me a question that I covered specifically in my talk, and I've gotten to the point where, okay, fine, people's minds wander. Doesn't mean you're boring. It doesn't mean they're not interested. It doesn't mean they're terrible listeners or anything else. It's just human nature. So if you pause frequently, what happens is you talk, and then you pause. If somebody's mind has wandered, and you talk, they'll stay wandered. When you pause, that break in the sound brings their attention back. Okay, so it not only brings their attention back, but anyway, it also gives them a chance to recoup their thoughts and to refocus on the slides. And the other one is it gives them a chance to ask questions. So always pause. Okay, pause frequently. All right, humor. Humor is good. Everybody loves humor. It makes your slide much more, it makes you much more engaging. However, you got to be careful with humor in a technical presentation. You see a lot of motivational talks where like every other slide is a joke, and that does not go over in technical presentations. You might be able to get away with starting with one as long as it's on topic and relevant, but just random jokes and stuff, it just doesn't go over well in the technical presentation, okay? It's very good if you show humility. Self-deprecating humor is great. Self-deprecating humor where you're telling a joke at your own expense or a story at your own expense. That's very, very much appreciated. It makes you look more down to earth, helps people relate with you. So self-deprecating humor and stories are awesome. And don't ever start your presentation. I put this up there because I heard it so many times. Well, I didn't have time to prepare a presentation. I didn't have enough time to prepare the presentation like I wanted. So this is what I've got. What that says to me, they'll start out that way. And what that says to me is, why am I here? Why am I listening to this? If it wasn't prepared, then why do I care? Okay, so don't do that. Even if it's true, don't do it. Okay. It can be very difficult to speak about technical things clearly and to help people understand them. You'll find that diagrams help a lot. So a technical presentation often has a lot of diagrams. They don't usually have pretty pictures and stuff like that and, flowers or whatever. That kind of content's great for motivational talks. It's not good for technical presentations, but you do need a lot of diagrams. Photographs, probably not. Just diagrams that help you explain that helps the audience understand the technical concept you're trying to get across. Okay. Sometimes you're going to have to present source code, and this will happen on Friday when you speak. You're going to show us your code. That's the goal. You have to show us your source code. So you're going to show us your code. If you just sit there and talk about the code, I don't know where it is. Code is very hard to read quickly. And so I can't scan the code. You might be talking about this function down here, but I'm reading up there because I haven't gotten to that point yet. So you're talking and I'm still reading here and I can't figure out what's going on. And so you should find a way to highlight what it is you're talking about. Usually you will select the code with your cursor if you're able to, or you can highlight it if it's in a slide, or just make sure you're pointing right at it. You know, this is the code I'm talking about, and that way the audience knows where to focus their attention. Code is very hard to read quickly. Okay. All right. Speak at a lower technical level than you think you should, even if you're talking to senior developers. Again, their mind's going to wander. They're not familiar with all the technical issues that you have been through and that you know. So I just dumb it down a little bit. Dumb it down a little bit. Speak at a little bit lower technical level than you think. Use simpler language than you think you should, and so on. Again, because if it's too complex, the audience will spend too much time trying to think about what you're saying, that you know how you're saying it, and to understand what you're saying, instead of trying to figure out what it is you're trying to get across. Okay, so just simpler language, not quite baby talk, but get close. Okay. Yes.
When we give our presentations, should we highlight the code we will be
I
talking?
suggest you highlight the code that you're talking about. Yes. That will make it easier for us to understand what it is you're speaking of. So just use a triple click or something to quickly triple click and drag will quickly highlight the function or something. Okay.
Okay.
All right. When you get to a slide, emphasize the main points of the slide, but don't read the slide. Again, there's nothing worse than me turning around and reading what's on the slide to you. You can do that yourself. That's not what the slide's for. The slide's not for me to know what to say. It's for you to get a quick overview of what it is I'm trying to say. So don't read your slides. Instead, you have to have practiced well enough that you know what they say and that you can then, you know, look at the slide, see it quickly. Oh, okay, this is where I'm supposed to talk about that function over there that I was working on. Okay. So, you know, so don't read your slides. Again, that guy I told you about, all he did is he read his slide. I thought, why am I here? I can do this on my own 10 times faster, right? So you don't want the audience to watch the back of your head as you're reading the slides. So don't read the slides. Okay. Let's see. All right. Pause regularly. I already talked about that. Next one. Look directly at the audience while you're speaking. That's so hard for us shy introverts to do, is to look at the audience while we're speaking. But it's extremely important. If you're on Zoom, look into the camera. If you're in an audience, in a group with an audience, you're going to have to look at the audience. Now, there's a little trick that they taught us there, which was awesome. Took me a long time to finally get my motor control so I could do it without it interrupting me and making me stumble in my speaking. But that trick is you pick somebody in the audience and you look at them right in the eyes. Make eye contact. You look at them right in the eyes and you say a sentence. Then when you're done with the sentence, you switch to someone else, you look right at them, and then you speak to them, even if they're working on their computer and not listening to you or not paying attention to you. And then you flip to somebody else and you speak directly to them. Okay, and so on. And what's amazing is when you do this, the entire audience thinks that you're speaking just to them.
Oh.
So I focus in you on eye contact, and I'm sitting over there. I get the sense that you're actually talking right to me. And every once in a while, I'll get there. Make sure when you do this that you flip from one side of the different locations in the room when you're talking to them. Don't always just pick people in this section, but just bounce around. Yes.
Why does it happen that if we speak to an audience, then we lose the train of thought? This technique you just explained should help with that, right?
It might, but what happens to me until I got the motor control down and made it natural, I would say my sentence and then I think, okay, I have to move and talk to somebody else or look at somebody else. And I do that and I go, wait, where was I? And I forget where I was. So I had to know my material really well, and I had to get where I could do that naturally and just kind of move my eyes around and look at different people. Okay. All right. If there is, oh, shoot. I forget all the time that I can't show that one.
Why?
Because I don't want you to read ahead.
Oh.
Whenever I ask you a question, there's something I do. all the time. What is it?
You look at us?
I look at you. What else? Anyone noticed?
Ah,
The entire 7 weeks I've been with you, whenever I've asked you a question, I've done this. So anybody know what it is?
you raise your voice up, your tone.
Nope. I might. Depends. If
Oh.
I'm asking a question, I might. But that's not what I'm thinking of. What would it be?
You raise your hand like this when you
I
ask.
raise,
Oh,
I raise my hand. Have you noticed me doing that?
No, yes.
You have not noticed that.
I have, yeah.
You have, good. So when we were in this training, the instructor did this. She said, when you ask a question, raise your hand. So I thought, that's weird. I don't want to do that. It looks odd. And then she said, I've been doing that for the last 3 hours we've been doing this. Every single time I've asked a question, I've raised my hand. And I thought, no, you haven't. And I looked around and there are other people in the audience saying, no, you haven't. And finally, someone like Rakaya said, I've been paying attention. And yes, every single time you ask a question, you raised your hand.
Oh, I remember Liam did that.
So it's incredible. Yes, it's incredible.
Doing that even right now while asking the question. So
Yeah. I tried putting my hand down because I didn't want to give it away, but then I realized it didn't matter. So it takes a little bit of work to make it natural and feel natural and do it well. But when you do, it's an extremely good clue to the audience. This is a cue to the audience that it is your turn to speak. I'm waiting for you now. So it does a couple of things. It lets the audience know I'm waiting for you to step in. This is a place where I want you to break in and answer. It also, since you're raising your hand, subconsciously it'll encourage them to raise their hand, so it keeps things kind of in control. You don't have people shouting out and talking over each other, and it kind of gives you a little better control over the audience and the experience. So that was just a fun little trick that I learned that I really like. Okay. Here it was. This was the paragraph. If you want to ask the audience a question, you want a response, raise your hand. Okay. All right. Then finally, do you like saying the same thing over and over and over again?
No.
Do you like it when you're in a conversation and people tell you the same thing 2 or 3 times?
No.
In a presentation, it's what you need to do. You need to repeat yourself over and over again. Like a lot of times when I teach now, I'll go over the same material 3 or 4 or 5 times, right? And it's very important in a presentation is a teaching environment, and it's very important. There's a very famous statement that says, repetition is the mother of pedagogy, where pedagogy is Latin for learning. So repetition helps you learn. So if you say the same things over and over again, it actually helps the audience. Those whose mind wander, they get to hear it.
Okay.
Those who are paying attention hear it again and it sinks in. Now, maybe the second and third and fourth times you say it, you might use different terms, different examples, different one, but you're basically repeating the same thing over and over again. You're telling them the same things. So don't feel bad about doing that. In fact, do it on purpose, even though it might seem weird. So in other words, presentations should not be dry. In many ways. All right, let's talk about the format. How do I put my slide deck together? This is all about how do I put my slide deck together. Have you ever heard this? Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
Never.
You've not heard that?
No.
I'd heard that many times. So I wasn't surprised when I came across this in our training and in other places where I've been reading about giving presentations. So what it means is, and it's true, it's what you do in a presentation. This is the introduction. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. So you introduce your topic. This is what I'm going to do. I'm here. I'm trying to give a technical presentation. I'm going to tell you about what the problem is and the proposal I'm going to produce, and then off we go. That's your introduction. I've told you what I'm going to tell you. Then I tell you, this is the main content. And then when I'm done, I tell them what I told you. This is the conclusion, the wrap up. Okay, so this is the problem I was trying to solve. This is my solution. What do you think? Okay, that kind of stuff. So Just remember that. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Okay. All right. So let me go through each one of them very briefly. In the introduction, you're going to provide an overview of what you're going to tell them. And then you're describing what problem you're solving. Usually you're solving a problem in a presentation, not always, but if you are, then you tell them what the problem is. And then you're going to tell them my goal. I'm here to tell you about the solution I've come up with for this technical problem. I want you to tell me if you agree that we should go down this path. Okay, so they know now why they're listening and what it is that they should be trying to get out of it. Yes.
For us in our presentations, the problem that we are trying to solve is going to be one particular, or are we going to talk about the whole
No, you're actually, the purpose of your presentation is informational.
information?
So you're not really solving a problem.
Oh.
You might though be telling us how you solve a specific problem. So it's informational. This is the problem that I was facing, or why this was challenging, why it was difficult. This is the approach I took. This is the solution I came up with. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. All right. The main content then, that's where you, of course, you focus on your goal, on driving people towards the goal. You want to make sure that content actually convinces people that it convinces them of the outcome that you want them to come to, without, I mean, just being logical and reasonable about what it is that you're presenting. Okay, and then usually you come, with the main point that you're trying to do would come towards the end. Okay, you're leading up to the point at the top of the mountain. Once you get there, then you roll over into the conclusion, and you wrap up with a summary of what you said. And again, here you restate the goal and you outline what actions you want the audience to take. So my goal was to present this technical solution and get a go, no go on it. I'd like you to now make a decision with me. Let's make a decision together, or send me your comments or whatever, and let's decide if this is what we want to do. Okay. All right. Again, so now I'm preparing my slides. I'm trying to figure out how to put my slides together. Your presentations often will be on slides. So that's why I focused on this with slides. Obviously, these aren't slides and they don't follow these rules, so don't use these as an example. But you should put, so how do you do this? So there should be one main thought on each slide. Don't put a slide up that has like 3 or 4 different main topics. You'll get bogged down. So break it up into 3 different slides. And then you'll usually use bullet points. Do not put sentences in your bullet points. I actually say this down a little bit later. But in your bullet points, you're going to use bullet points. You'll have maybe 3 to 5 bullet points, so they're not too dense.
Mm-hmm.
If you make your slides too dense, then what happens? So you think, oh, good, I'm just going to put all kinds of information on this slide so that the audience gets all the information they need, and they have, and it's all there. They don't have to listen to me. They just read. That's the tempting thing to do. It's bad. Don't do it that way. Don't make your slides too dense. If the slides are dense and require a lot of reading, then what will the audience do?
Read.
They'll read. And what will they not be doing?
Listening.
Listening to you. So you want the audience to listen to you. The slides, the bullet points on your slide should be there. They usually don't even put full sentences. If it's a full sentence, again, they'll read the sentence. So you just put a phrase up that they can see quickly. And then your job is to explain what it is that you're trying to get across there. So just do 3 to 5 bullet points, and they should just be phrases. Okay. I really like to reveal the bullet points one at a time. If I just open up the slide and it's got all 5 bullet points on it, then what does the audience do? They read all 5 bullet points, and I'm talking about the first one. They're down to the last one, and they're thinking about something other than what I'm saying. So I like to bring them in one at a time. I bring it in, talk about it, then bring in the next one and talk about it. Very effective. Okay. All right. And again, don't read your slide content and avoid using complete sentences in your slides. All right. Graphics. Again, photos are usually a bad idea in a technical presentation. For some reasons, I guess since we write code all day, we like text. So we see a lot of text. However, technical diagrams are incredible at helping people understand what's going on. So, architecture diagrams, interaction diagrams, flow charts, things like that, that can often help you understand what's going on. So they're very, very, very useful for explaining and describing and helping people understand technical content. But you need to be careful. Don't make your diagrams too dense. I find that I often have to simplify reality when I'm doing the diagrams in the slide. And even though there's lots and lots of details to what's really going on, I'll just put one big box. Say, this is this is where all the magic happens, or whatever else, and put big blocks so that people get a high level view of what's going on. Maybe then I'll do another slide that goes into the details on one of the boxes or something. So they are extremely useful, but don't make them too complicated. And then when you have them on the screen, it's also tempting to just sit there and talk about it, but you can't. You have to point. You have to point. This box here is the server. This box here is the client. Okay, even if it says server and client on it, it's still going to be hard for the audience to grasp. But you have to be very explicit about pointing at what you're talking about. Again, when you're doing that in your presentation, you can either use the mouse to point on the screen. You can point on here if you're live. But again, don't show us the page and say, oh, I have a button for the shopping cart. And the next thing I'm doing is I'm looking over the screen. Where is it? Where is it? So I have a button on my shopping cart up in the header on the right, and move the mouse up so they can get there, or kind of point to it so that they know where to look and they're not scanning your screen. So even in your presentation, these kinds of things can really help. All right, good. And the last topic is practice. Practice is probably the most important advice of all. You must prepare your slides and your presentation well in advance. If you prepare it that morning and you give the presentation an hour later, it's going to flop. You will forget what it is you wanted to say. You'll be reading your slides all the time and it just won't come across well. You have to prepare it well in advance. Hopefully you'll be given enough time to do that. You don't always have it, but you do the best you can. Prepare it well in advance and then read over it again and again and again. And as you read over it, think this is what I'm going to say here. This is what I'm going to say here. This is what I'm going to say here. Practice it to yourself as you're preparing your slides and go over it and over and over it. Once you have what you think is right, then and what you're going to do, then practice your presentation out loud. Okay, so you need to speak your presentation aloud. I find that if I speak it in my head, I always talk faster in my head than I do when I'm speaking it out loud. Even if I try to think slowly, I still go faster than if I speak it out loud. So I have to talk out loud so that I make sure I've got the timing correct. And then also it's a good way to internalize what it is you're going to say. For some reason, most of us will remember things better if we speak them out loud than if we just think them. Okay, so speak it out loud. Steve Jobs would practice his keynote addresses for weeks. He'd go for weeks in advance. He would usually start before the slide deck was even fully finished. He would get his executive team, put them on the front row, and he'd be given his presentation, and he'd stop all frequently and ask them, is this the right way to do it? Is it not? And so on. And then he'd refine his presentation on the fly as they went and as he learned, and that's how he did it. And he spent weeks and weeks and weeks getting them perfect, especially for the keynotes for the developer conferences and stuff. Okay, he would practice them out loud and then stop a lot. I read once that he would usually rehearse for 1 hour for every minute of his presentation.
Oh my God.
So if he had a presentation that was going to go for 60 minutes, which is pretty common at the conferences, he would have 60 hours of rehearsal.
So he would take maybe a little pause after each minute.
That would be over.
And you'd speak for a minute, then he'd pause maybe.
Yeah, but then he'd do it again and again and again and again and again and again. Okay, so 1 hour for every minute. So he's saying it over and over and over and over and over again to make sure he's got it
Wow.
down perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, you probably don't have to do that. Steve Jobs was a perfectionist. He was a master at presentations. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do presentations as well as he does. He did. He was phenomenal at giving presentations. And, you know, he had $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar company, depending on how well he did. So he practiced them. So you don't have to practice them for that long, most likely. But how long should you spend? I did some reading on that, and I found that a good rule of thumb is to spend about 30 minutes of practice time for every 2 minutes of presentation time. Okay, so about 15 minutes per minute. So if you're saying, okay, I'm going to do a 20-minute presentation, that's 10 2-minute chunks. So that's 5 hours. So I'd have 5 hours where I'd be, you know, going over my slides, rehearsing them, making sure I really have them down and that I've got it ready to go. As you get more experience, you'll probably spend less time. So what this means then, you're going to talk for 8 minutes on Friday. That's 4 2-minute chunks, 15 minutes each is an hour. So that's doable. So just kind of go over it and over it for about an hour until you're really comfortable with what it is you're going to say. And then your presentation will go well. You won't have to be nearly as nervous. You won't be scared, and you'll have a great time with it. All right. So that's what I'm going to have to say here. I just want to wrap up by saying, you know, I have found that the ability to give good presentations does make can have a big impact on your career. Mostly, if you give bad presentations, it will harm you. If you give good presentations, fine. If you give great presentations, it might help you. But presentations are important. And as I said, we spent 1 out of the 3 days on our offsite just going over how to do presentations. So they're very important to learn how to do them well. All right, any questions that haven't been already asked on the giving presentations? All right, so that's it. And ended a little early. That's good. Let me stop recording.